Hi everyone, it's me, Miss Wild. Welcome to your second violin and viola lesson. To start off with, I just want to make sure that we remember one of the things we learned last lesson. So I would like you to get your violin or viola, still leaving the bow in the case. I just want you to sit in rest position, left hand, left knee, just so we are ready to learn. And this will also then mean that you can kind of refer to your instrument for the first part of the lesson, because the first thing I'd like you to do is to look at the 5 questions I'm about to display, and I'm going to give you just 30 seconds to have a think about the answers. Okay, let's go over some of these answers then. So number 1, the violin and viola are members of the strings family because they've got these strings that we play with. Number 2, to play the violin and viola, you must pull a bow across the strings. This is both true and false. It is true that you use a bow to produce a sound, but of course what we've learned is that method called pizzicato, where you pluck the strings with your other hand. So it is true that you must pull a bow across the strings, but that's not the only way to produce the sound on the violin and viola, as you know. Third question, the viola is smaller than the violin. That is false. It is the violin that is slightly smaller. I'm always playing on a violin in these videos, but those of you who have got a viola may notice already that yours is slightly bigger, and you can see it on the pictures that I've shown you last week. Number 4, violins and violas have strings to press your fingers on when you want to produce a certain note. We didn't speak about this last lesson, but it is actually true. Of course it has strings, as well as playing them the way that we've learnt so far. As we get more advanced, we will learn how to place our fingers in certain positions to change the pitch of the note, to change the note that we're playing. And finally, number 5, how many strings do violins and violas have? Of course, you could have just looked at your instrument. It's 4. Of course it's 4. Okay, year 7. So the main thing that we looked at last lesson was how to hold our violins and violas in the 3 main positions. You should already be sat in position 1, which is where we hold it with our left hand on the shoulder of the violin or viola, and we rest it on our left knee. That's position 1. Position 2, where we're getting ready to play, is where we put our violin or viola, we slide it down the left side of our face and rest it on the left shoulder. Definitely not the collarbone, certainly not our chest, definitely on our left shoulder. And then we turn our head to the left so that we can look down the violin or viola towards the scroll at the end. That's position 2. And then position 3, for now, is where we get our other hand, form an L, put a thumb on the corner of the fingerboard like that, and then have our index finger ready so that we can pluck our strings. So those are the 3 positions. So can we just go through those together? Can I see you all in position 1, which you should be in already? And then let's go to position 2, and I want you to all go through the different stages of putting your violin or viola on your head, sliding it down your ear, onto your shoulder, and then looking towards the scroll. Now you'll notice that all of this time, I've got a gap here between my arm and the side of my body. And then of course, position 3, ready to play. Good, back into position 1, please. Well done, very, very good. So what I would like us to do today, as a warm-up, is to take all of that knowledge and apply it to our violins and violas. So we are going to start with the green box that you can see on the screen. And I want us to just take 30 seconds to have a look at the notes in that green box, to use the information at the bottom here, and to see if you can figure out how you would kadai that green box of rhythms. That's 30 seconds now. Okay, let's give it a go. After 4, let's see if we can say the kadai for this green box all together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, 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 ti, ti. Very good. So we should have remembered that this funny zigzag line here is a ma, it's a 1-beat rest, and it's a really good idea when we're talking about rests to whisper them, just so we know that that's when we don't play. We wouldn't be playing anything when we transfer it to our instruments. Okay, so the next stage in our practice routine would be to say the note, and I am going to choose the D string for this warm-up. Now, just to give you a quick reminder, last lesson we spoke about the 4 strings that you've got on the violin, which you can see on the left-hand side here, and on the viola, which you can see on the right-hand side here. So the way it's set out here is if you're holding your violin or viola and looking down the scroll, you can read the strings from left to right and it will match up with the strings as you see them. So the note on the far left for the violins is a G, and the string on the far left as I look at it is the G. So it goes G, D, A, E. You've got a viola, exactly the same thing. You can read the strings from left to right at the top of the screen here. And as you look down your viola, the one on the left, according to the screen, is a C. So we will be going C, G, D, A, with A being the highest string. Okay, so as I said, we are going to go on the D string and we are going to say the note instead of kadaiing it. So we're going to say D for each note that we've got here. So let's try that together, sitting in rest position. After 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. D, 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 D. Very good. Next step is to say the note again, but this time we're going to pizzicato at the same time. So instruments into position 2, and then position 3. Now, if you are looking at the screen, it's absolutely fine to just turn to the side slightly, so as you look down your instrument, you can see what you're meant to be following. Okay, after 4, let's try that again. So we're saying the note and pizzicatoing and playing. 1, 2, 3, 4. D, 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 D. Very good. Now you might notice that I was kind of stopping the string after I'd finished playing by just touching it with my finger. I'm not plucking it again, I was just stopping it from vibrating so that we can really emphasize the rest, we can emphasize the silence. Excellent. And then of course we go back into rest position afterwards. The 4th step in our practice routine, as I'm sure you've already remembered, is then to just play it without saying the kadai, without saying the notes. We just want to perform it, even though it's just a warm-up, just so we're in the habit of hearing what the sound is when we take away all of those extra bits of support. So after 4, let's all try and perform just the green box, just the rhythm on a D string. So let's go into position 2. Making sure we've got a nice gap here between our arms and the side of our torso. Position 3. And after 4, we're going to perform the green box. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then back into position 1. Excellent. Okay, now that we are warmed up and we have recapped how we hold the violin and viola, how we get ready to play, what the different strings are, we are ready to play our very first proper piece of music on our instruments. So we got there in less than 2 lessons, which is really impressive. So the piece is called Willow, Waltz. It's from your Vermouche books, but you should be able to see it on the screen, so don't worry if you don't have the music there. The very first thing I want you to do is to just look at the music in front of you. Now you'll notice there aren't any notes on the stave yet, because we haven't learned about that in our theory lessons yet. It's just telling us what strings we need to play. So for all of us, violins and violas, we're only focusing on 3 different strings, G, D, and A. But the difference is it mixes between them so that we're not necessarily always going in order. You'll also notice that after each note there are 2 dots. Now that is telling us that we need to hold it on for 2 extra beats. So for example, the first line would go D, 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 A. And every time I'm clicking, that is representing one of those dots. So if we look at the top here at our practice routine, the very first thing that we would normally do is we would normally kadai the piece. But as you can see, we don't actually need to do that in this case because we don't have any rhythms, we don't have any notes on the stave. It's already basically telling us what to do. So we can miss out that first step. This is probably the only time you're allowed to miss out that first step, but we can do it for Willow Waltz. So the very first step is that we're just going to say the notes. We're going to read through the whole piece of music from left to right for the first line, then left to right for the second line, just as though we're reading a book. But we're going to be saying the notes or singing the notes straight away. So violins and violas in rest position. The first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to sing one line and you're going to sing it back. All right? I will hum it when you're meant to be joining in, just so that you can still sort of gauge what we're meant to be doing. All right? But I want you to be saying the notes as we are singing them. So here's the first line, and I'll give myself 3 beats in. 1, 2, 3. D, 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 A. Now you. Now listen to the next one. D, G, D, A. Now you. Listen. D, 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 A. Now you. Now listen. D, G, A, D. Now you. So this time, let's just try and say or sing the notes all the way through, all together. So me and you, all the way through, not line by line. After 3, ready? 1, 2, 3. D, 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 A, D, G, D, A, D, 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 A, D, G, A, D. Excellent. So we're going to go to the next stage of the practice routine, which is to say and pizzicato. I'd like to do it 2 lines at a time. 2 lines at a time. So I will play it first, and then I'll ask you to repeat it. All right, so we're in position 1. Let's go into position 2. Looking down our instrument, getting our right hand ready, on the corner of the fingerboard, making sure we've got a gap here. And the very, very first note is a D. So violins, check the graph at the left of the screen, figure out where a D is, make sure your finger is on the correct string. Violas, check the graph on the right of your string, should be the 3rd string for you, make sure your finger is in the right place. Okay, listen carefully as I play the first 2 lines, and then I'd like you to repeat them after me. So here we go, after 3, 1, 2, 3. D, 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 A, D, G, D, A. Now you. D, 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 A, D, G, D, A. Now me. D, 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 A, D, G, A, D. Now you. D, 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 A, D, G, A, D. Rest position. On the last line, you will notice that it goes from a G and then it goes straight up to an A. Now, if you look at your graph at the top of the screen, if you're on a violin, a G to an A is quite a big jump. You have to miss out that D string. If you're on the viola, same thing. It's just in a different place. If you're starting on a G and going up to an A, you're having to miss out that string in the middle. Now, this is quite a nice gentle piece. It's not too fast. So as long as you know that in your mind, you're just adding a bit of a pair of glasses maybe, or an exclamation mark at that point, then hopefully you will remember when it gets to that point that you've just got to take a bit more care in making sure that you skip a string to go over to the A string. And that's why it's so important that we're singing the notes as we're playing it, because hopefully you'll be able to hear straight away. If you're playing something and you're singing something different, that'll tell you that something's not quite right. So that's why we do it. It's not just because I want to hear all of you singing, although that is just an added bonus. Now, the really exciting thing about this piece and all of the Vermouche pieces is they come with a backing track, so an accompaniment that goes with it. So let's just have a listen. I'm going to play along to the backing track so that you get a sense of what it sounds like, and then we'll pause for a moment, we'll regroup, and we will try and perform it to the backing track all together. If you like, maybe you could sing along, so that, or mime along, or pizzicato along with me, just so you're getting that extra bit of practice in. Three, my fingers on the D string. 1, 2, 3. With the backing track, it turns it into a nice piece of music. Let's see if we can just perform it. So you don't need to say the notes, but if you're finding it helpful, then by all means continue. If you're ready, then let's just try and play it, but without you saying the notes, without you having to have that extra bit of help. I'll just give it for those who might find it a bit helpful. Okay, so show me position 1, position 2, sliding down our ear, on our shoulder, turning down and looking down the violin and viola. Position 3, if you're on a violin, make sure your finger is hovering over the D string, which is the second one from the left. If you're on a viola, your D string is the third one from the left. Are we ready? Of course we are. Here we go. I'll count you in. Ready? 1, 2, 3. D. Up to A. Back to D. Down to G. Back to D. Then A. Third line. D. Now the last line, D, all the way down to G. Now miss out that string for A, back to D. Rest position. Amazing. So what I would like you to do is to do some homework between now and next lesson. If you can, do a couple of minutes every day, then amazing. You don't have to do all of these different steps every day, but even if you just get your instrument out of its case, practice going between the positions and maybe play the strings while saying what they are, then that will be incredible and you'll notice a difference straight away. If you can't commit to doing some practice every day, then it's not the end of the world at all. I would say ideal at this stage would be to do maybe 10 minutes, maybe 3 times a week, 4 if you've got the time. That would be incredible. And I've been really specific with what I'd like you to do when you're getting your instrument out of its case this week. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to just revise those positions that we've gone over. Position 1, position 2, and position 3. Now, a really good way to do this is to do it in front of a mirror or in front of someone you live with at home who can sort of nag you if you're not doing it right. So if you're doing it in front of a mirror, the main things I want you to be looking out for are in position 2, making sure that you are still wearing your instrument as a hat, sliding it down the side of your head so that it's on your shoulder. The minute you feel as though you're pointing it in front of you, then loads of things are wrong. First of all, you'll see that my arm is collapsed against the side of my body. You'll notice that I'm sort of dragging my instrument down. It just looks a bit rubbish and it's going to cause problems later on. So if you can be really strict with yourself when you're revising position 2 in particular, make sure your violin or your viola is on your shoulder, make sure it's pointing out that way, and make sure you're having to turn your head to the side so that you can look down your instrument like that. Okay, not forgetting that what I said to you today is that you need to always make sure there's a gap here. And then for position 3, making sure that you make that L, put thumb on the corner of the fingerboard there, and then your first finger, your index finger, is just maybe a couple of inches down the fingerboard, so that it's in the really sweet spot in terms of the sound. And then I've said that I'd like you to revise the open strings. Now, there are a few ways of doing this. You might find that you can come up with a rhyme that helps you to remember what the strings are for the violin or viola. You might find that that's not actually that helpful for you, and that you want to keep referring to these diagrams at the top of the page. Absolutely fine to do that, absolutely fine. But what I would love for you to do is to just spend those few minutes of your practice just maybe saying what the strings are as you play them. So I might, on the violin, just simply go G, 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 D, 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 A, 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 and then up to the E string as well. I might just go through them while saying them. And then what I would love for you to do is to just go over Willow Waltz a few times, but making sure that A, you're practicing it along to the backing track, B, you're making sure that you've got that accuracy in terms of the notes. It might mean sort of going over that tricky corner a couple of times, and C, that you look so professional while you're doing it. You've got the perfect posture, you've got the perfect violin or viola hold, and you're making a really beautiful sound and letting those strings ring out. And it might be even that at the end of your week's practice, you want to perform it, in which case you can perform it along to the backing track to mum, dad, brothers, sisters, great aunt, the cat, whoever you live with at home, just so you're getting used to sharing all these amazing things that you're learning and communicating that music with those people around you. So that's it for this week. That's lesson 2 done. And next week we will be looking at a new piece already. And if we're lucky, we might even get the bow out and start learning how to hold the bow. So good luck and happy practicing.